In the months after his daughter died, Martin came to understand the architecture of a silent house. He had lived in the same house for 19 years and had known its sounds the way a person knows a language they grew up speaking, not by conscious knowledge, but by the body's deep familiarity. The third stairs complaint under a particular weight. The kitchen pipes knocking in cold weather with the irregular rhythm of something thinking. The boiler making its decision in the small hours. He had lived with all of it without hearing any of it for 19 years. After Clara, he heard everything. She had been 23 years old. She had been, by any measure available to the people who loved her, someone who was going to be fine in the world, not in the vague parental way, but specifically. She had known by 23 what she cared about and how she wanted to spend her time, and which of the people in her life were worth keeping. She called Martin every Sunday evening. She had been learning to make bread. She had a trip to Japan booked for March. The accident was in November. The trip to Japan had been paid for. Martin had returned to work in January. He had attended the things he was supposed to attend, answered the questions he was supposed to answer, and people had told him, with the careful warmth of people who do not know what else to offer, that he was being very strong. He was not being strong. He was being present in the body while somewhere else entirely, which is a different thing that can look, from the outside, deceptively similar. The first text arrived on a Wednesday evening in February, 14 months after the accident. Martin was in the kitchen, the same kitchen he had been sitting in at 2 a.m. for over a year, in the dark, listening to the refrigerator hum. It was evening now, not the middle of the night, and the radio was on, and there was pasta he had made and half-eaten on the table. His phone lit up on the counter beside him. He looked at it without particular attention. Then he looked at it again. The message was from Clara's number. He sat very still for a long time. The radio continued its conversation with the empty room. Outside the window, the February dark had settled completely over the street, and the lamp on the corner threw its orange light across the wet pavement in the way it had been doing every night for 19 years. He picked up the phone. The message said, "Dad, have you fed the cat?" He had no cat. He had never had a cat. Clara had wanted one when she was 12, and he had said no because of his allergies, and she had maintained, as a long-standing piece of fond family comedy, that this was the foundational injustice of her childhood. It was one of their things, a small running reference that required no explanation between them, the way all the truest things between people require no explanation. He understood, in the part of his mind that was still operating clearly, that this was not possible. He knew what death was. He had been in a room with white walls and identified her, and he knew, with the certainty of direct experience, that she was gone. He typed back, "What cat?" Her reply came in under a minute. The rhythm of it was hers, the quick, faintly impatient speed of someone who considers typing a conversation rather than a correspondence. "Dad, the one you finally got. Have you fed him today?" Martin looked around the kitchen. There was no cat. There was the cold pasta, and the radio, and the lamp through the window. He typed, "I fed him. He's fine." "Good," she said. "Talk later." He told himself it was a reassigned number. someone else's daughter texting her own father about a real cat, and the message landing through some fault of the network on his phone instead. He told himself this with the deliberate, effortful attention of a man applying logic to something that does not want logic applied to it. He told himself this for 4 days. Then he opened a new message to her number and typed, "How was your day?" And it began. The conversations that followed were small and ordinary and entirely, precisely hers. She was still learning to make bread. The crust was improving, but the interior was too dense, which she described with the slightly breathless front-loading of enthusiasm she had always brought to problems she was invested in solving. She had opinions about a film. She asked about his sleep because she had always known he slept badly. She made the jokes she made, in the rhythm she made them, with the particular timing that had always been her own. She did not mention the accident. She existed in these messages in a permanent, unbroken present tense, and Martin understood, without examining the understanding, that asking about it would break something he was not prepared to have broken. So he did not ask. He placed a bowl of water on the kitchen floor. For the cat, he told himself. He named the cat. He mentioned the cat to Clara, and she asked about it with the interest she had always had for animals, and the interest was correct. The questions were hers, and he found that he could not look too closely at the fact that when he tried to describe the cat to her, its color, its habits, the details arrived fully formed, as though he were remembering something rather than inventing it. He bought a small bag of cat food. He stored it under the sink. He was not losing his mind. This is what he told himself, carefully, on the mornings when the clarity came and he could see the bowl on the floor and the cat food under the sink and the phone on the counter with the messages in it. He was managing grief in the way that made the days passable. Everyone managed grief differently. This was his way. He told himself this until he almost believed it. His sister Margaret came in May. She came with food and the brisk, managing energy of someone who has decided that being useful is the best version of love available to them right now. She moved through the house with the quiet efficiency of someone assessing something they're worried about, noticing the bowl on the floor, the framed photograph of Clara on the windowsill with the smooth stone placed in front of it, the cat food under the sink that she found while looking for the washing up liquid. She did not say anything about any of it. She made lunch, and they sat together and talked about other things, and she was warm and present, and Martin felt for the afternoon something that resembled normality. She left at 9. She hugged him at the door with more force than usual and said she would call in the week. She came back 20 minutes later for the green scarf she had left on the kitchen chair. She let herself in quietly with the spare key he had given her years ago. She did not want to wake him. He had gone up early, which she took as a good sign. His phone was on the kitchen counter. She saw the notification as she picked up the scarf. She saw the name on it before she could choose not to. She stood in the kitchen for a long moment. Then she sat down in the chair she had sat in that afternoon, and she read through the entire exchange from the beginning. It took her 40 minutes. She read 7 months of conversation, Martin's side and Clara's side, the bread and the film and the jokes and the Sunday rhythm of it. She read it with the careful attention of someone who loves the person who wrote it and is therefore required to understand it completely before she can decide what to do. Then she looked at the phone's actual records, the call log, the message metadata that most people never look at, the routing information, the sender data, the technical truth beneath the visible surface of the conversation. Every message she had read on Clara's side had been sent from Martin's own number, sent to his own number, received by his own number. The phone had been used as both sides of the conversation, generating replies in Clara's name from the same device that received them, with no memory of the sending retained in the part of Martin's mind that woke up each morning and made tea and fed a cat that did not exist. She sat with this for a long time. She had known from the bowl on the floor and the cat food under the sink that something was wrong. She had not known the specific shape of the wrong until now. She called Martin's GP from the kitchen, quietly, with the phone turned to its lowest volume. She described what she had found in the careful, precise language of someone who wants to be taken seriously and knows that how you say a thing determines whether it is heard. The GP listened. He said he would arrange for Martin to be seen in the morning, not by him, but by someone better equipped. She went upstairs. She knocked softly on Martin's door. He was awake. She could tell from the quality of the silence before he answered. She sat on the edge of his bed in the dark room, and she told him what she had found. She told him plainly, without softening it, because she knew him well enough to know that softening it would be a form of disrespect. She told him about the messages and the metadata, and the call she had made to his GP. Martin listened. She could not see his face clearly in the dark, but she could hear his breathing, slow, even, the breathing of someone who is absorbing something they have been, on some level, waiting to hear. When she finished, the room was quiet for a long time. Then Martin said, "I know." Margaret waited. He said, "I know, Margaret. I have known for a while. I couldn't stop." She reached out in the dark and found his hand. She held it the way she had held it when they were children, and he was frightened of something, which he had always been too proud to name and too frightened to face alone. He said, "She sounded exactly like her, every single time. I can't explain it. I sat down to type, and her voice just came." Margaret said, "I know." He said, "I don't know how to stop missing her enough to stop." She said, "You don't have to stop missing her. You just have to let someone help you carry it differently." He didn't answer, but he didn't let go of her hand either.
3 months later, Martin's kitchen had changed in small ways. The bowl on the floor was gone. The cat food under the sink was gone. The phone no longer lived on the counter. He kept it in the other room now, on the advice of the psychiatrist he had been seeing since the morning after Margaret's visit. A man named Dr. Anand, who had listened to everything without the quality of surprise that Martin had expected, and who had said, with the matter-of-fact warmth of someone who has seen grief take many forms, "The mind finds the shape that lets it survive. The work is finding a shape that also lets you live." The photograph of Clara was still on the windowsill. The smooth stone was still in front of it. Martin had asked Dr. Anand if he should put the photograph away, and Dr. Anand had said that was entirely Martin's choice, and that there was a meaningful difference between remembering someone and substituting them, and that Martin had always known which one he was doing. He had known. That was the part that still sat heavily. Not that it had happened, but that he had known throughout and had chosen the substitution anyway, because the alternative was a grief so complete he had not trusted himself to survive it. On Sunday evenings, the time Clara used to call, Martin now called Margaret instead. Not a deliberate replacement, it had started accidentally the first Sunday when the silence of that particular hour had become unbearable, and had continued because Margaret always answered on the second ring and they talked about nothing important for 20 minutes, and it was enough. Not the same, not a substitute, simply a real thing in the space where the absence was. On a Sunday evening in August, Martin was at the kitchen table when his phone lit up in the other room. He went through to it. It was Margaret calling 10 minutes early. He answered it. He sat back down at the kitchen table in the evening light and talked to his sister, and outside the window, the lamp on the corner came on as the dark came in, and the house around him made its familiar sounds, the pipes, the boiler thinking about coming on, and he heard them the way he always heard them now. He did not look at Clara's contact in his phone. He had not deleted it. He did not think he ever would. But he did not open it either. That, Dr. Anand had told him, was enough. For now, that was enough.